All right, guys, let's talk about what you need to know as a buyer or a seller here on Long Island when you are looking to buy or sell a property that may have permitting issues, whether that is a no CO for something, no certificate of occupancy, or an open permit on something that is there, or maybe it's even an expired permit from an old permit that a homeowner or even yourself has opened in the past. My name is Anthony Vita with Real Broker here on Long Island, and I'm gonna take you through all the things that you need to be aware of, whether you're a buyer or a seller in today's market, trying to establish what the risk is on a property that may have an open permit or an expired permit or no certificate of occupancy at all that's been issued from the town. So tag along in this video and I'm gonna take you through all the major things you need to pay attention to and really put yourself in a good position when you're looking at a property so you know exactly what to expect. So first things first, how do we know if a property may have an open permit, an expired permit, or no CO on something, okay? So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're going to go to the local municipality. That might be a general township. For example, I live in Setauket, my township is town of Brookhaven. But because I'm in a village, the local municipality for me, who's actually controlling the building department, is going to be the village of Poquat. So whatever property you're looking at, you wanna make sure if it's located in a village, that you're going to the proper place to actually pull those permits from the building department. Some villages don't actually have their own building department. It really depends. So you've got to ask the broker that you're working with, or basically just call the local village and ask them what building department you're supposed to go to, whether it's the general town of Hempstead, town of Brookhaven, town of Islip, any of those to figure out where you're actually going to go to pull those permits on a property. And what you're going to want to do is do a FOIL request, okay? FOIL, FOIL request. The FOIL request is going to allow you to check off some boxes when you submit that form. You're gonna wanna make sure that you're number one, you're gonna check off obviously open permits, COs, surveys, and expired permits. You'll submit that form and sometimes in some of the townships, you can get it in person that day with a small fee. It could be anywhere from $5 to $25, or sometimes you do have to wait a little bit of time. But usually within 30 days, you're able to actually pull a FOIL application on that property and see exactly what the building department has on it. So let's go over a couple of the different terms we're gonna be throwing around in this video. First thing is gonna be permit, right? Everyone loves to talk about, does it have a permit or not, right? So a couple things here. A permit is what a builder or a homeowner is actually going to get from the town in order to actually start work on a project that would require a permit in that local municipality. So when the project is complete, you don't get a permit. You get a permit to start work, okay? So that's number one. So the first thing is gonna be a permit. If it's an open permit, right, that means that you opened a permit for a project and the permit was never closed, okay? Secondly, you're gonna have an expired permit. That means that you opened a permit on a project. Usually those permits are gonna be good for a certain time period, usually between 12 months and 24 months. If that permit was never closed out, if a CO was never issued, okay, that permit would be considered expired in the time. So you got open permit, expired permit, and next we're gonna have CO, okay? CO stands for Certificate of Occupancy. This is the document that the township is actually gonna give you when the work is completed, inspected, and they're giving you a CO for the space or the project that was done. The next thing you're gonna hear us talk about is letter in lieu, right? This is another thing that's particular to Long Island. Most of our townships did not actually start doing COs until 1958, 1959. So oftentimes if there's something that was done before that, they may not have any paperwork on it, especially here where I live in Setauket where we're selling property. Some of these projects were done in the 1940s. It might be a detached garage with no CO on it and they weren't issuing COs at the time. So sometimes in a case of that, we're gonna go for a letter in lieu, right? A letter in lieu of a CO. Or the second thing that we could apply for there is a certificate of compliance, which means the town would come out and basically say, okay, the current state that it's in, it's either been there way before and hasn't been touched from a certain time period before 1958 or whenever they started giving COs, or the current condition is compliant with current code. So the two big ones you're gonna hear when you're looking at property here in Long Island is buyers and brokers are gonna say no CO for something, right? They might be talking about a basement, a deck, a garage conversion, or you're also gonna hear them say open permit, right? Two very different things. But what I want you to know about no COs is there are a lot of things here on Long Island. It's just the reality of it. I am not giving you legal advice, but there's a lot of things here that oftentimes don't have a CO. A couple of those are decks in the backyard, above ground pools, maybe fences in a certain area, and oftentimes the big one is gonna be finished basements, okay? A lot of people here on the island do not get a CO when they finish a basement. So this is pretty common here if you're looking to buy or sell property. And if you're a seller who does not have a CO for some of those things, then you're probably most likely like everybody else. but there's a big difference between no CO and an open permit. So although it's common here to buy and sell property without having a CO for things, having an open permit on some of those items, or really having an open permit in general, is a much different game. This means, like we mentioned earlier, that you actually went to the town and you opened up a building application and you have an active permit in place on an improvement in the property or changing the property that you didn't complete. And where a seller or a buyer expects a seller to be on that process, and where a seller is actually in that open permit process, is also a big difference. We also have to look at timing here. When was the permit opened? Has it been extended? When was the last actual inspection done from the town regarding that permit? Have they looked at plumbing? Have they looked at electrical? Where they were really at in that open permit process is also something that you really need to get an idea on when you're looking to buy and sell property here on Long Island. So if you're a seller and you're getting inspections done with an open permit, make sure that you're actually keeping a copy of those inspection results depending on where you're at in the process. And if you're a buyer, make sure that you're requesting that information from the building division and not just a simple FOIL, so you can actually see where the seller's at regarding that open permit. And it's really important to realize here that an open permit for one type of improvement varies drastically versus another type of improvement. Some open permits, obviously, depending on the type of work that you're going to be doing, are going to require electrical inspections, plumbing inspections, structural inspections, framing inspections. The list can go on. It can be insulation, foundation, a lot of different things you're going to want to look at. And where they're at in that open permit process is really important when it actually comes to closing out that permit. So you're going to want to make sure you know exactly what the permit was open for. You could just get a copy of it. It's going to have a number. You can usually look it up on the website, but you're going to want to make sure you're getting a copy of that open permit, getting an idea if there's a contractor involved, where they're at inspection-wise, and getting copies of those actual inspection results to see if they pass or failed. Or worst case scenario, you're gonna have to go back, open walls up, and show those plumbing, electrical, or wherever you're at in the process to make sure that you're gonna pass that type of inspection to continue to close out the permit. As you can see, we're getting very involved here when it comes to open permits, which is why, although it might be common to sell property here without a CO for something, it's not very common to sell property here on the regular open market that has an open permit for these things. Timing is a really big factor when it comes to these, and the local municipalities don't tend to jump over hoops for you. So the biggest fear when you're buying property is what the timing is going to look like and what the cost is, of course, to actually get these permits closed out. So if you're a seller, you got to understand that when it comes to value-wise, if a buyer is actually looking to buy that property and take on that risk, they're gonna want some compensation for it. Now, when it comes to an open permit expiring, or we call it an expired permit, the difference there is not only are you gonna wanna get an idea of where they were at timeline when the permit actually expired, but that permit is no longer valid. You're gonna have to go ahead and actually reopen that permit. Typically for that, you may be able to use the plans depending that you submitted last time, depending on when the actual timing when that permit was opened. But if it's a 15-year-old permit, for example, or even the 20-year-old expired permit, could be even longer than that. You can't necessarily just say, okay, the architect and the plans that we drew up at the time were okay for the current code, because code changes all the time. So an expired permit is a totally different thing, and you're gonna wanna make sure you're figuring out exactly where they were at in that process, and make sure you're checking the actual timing of when that permit was open and how far back it is. So for helping people buy and sell real estate here on the island for almost 10 years now, I've heard sellers and buyers use a lot of these phrases that really aren't accurate, and they come with some preconceived notions. So let's talk about some of those things. So the first thing you're gonna hear is, oh, we had the open permit, we're all done with our inspections, and we're just waiting on the document from the town, right? This is a big one. Well, the question is, where are they actually at with that? Because did they actually have all the inspections completed, right? Have they received that final letter that the town's gonna give them after the inspections are completed to submit for the CO? And there's actually a checklist, especially when you're dealing with the town of Brookhaven, for example. It's a pretty deep checklist that's gonna be required after inspections are complete to actually even get that CO. So the big thing is, it's not an instant thing. You don't finish your work, finish your inspections, get your CO that day. After your work is completed, after all your inspections are done, there's still gonna be a required checklist to submit to the township in order to actually receive that CO. And the timing is usually between 3 and 6 weeks, in my opinion, in my experience, before you actually get that document. And when attorneys are writing contracts, that's what it's gonna say. The contract is not gonna read when the inspections are done. Instead, it's gonna read, a CO will be issued at closing. So if you're a seller, make sure you're giving yourself enough time in that contract to actually close out those permits after the inspection is done, at least 3 to 6 weeks in there. And if you're a buyer, make sure that you're getting a review of where they are in that checklist. Something recent we had was a final survey is gonna be required on that checklist after all the inspections are done. And what happened was, although the seller had purchased the property like this before the permit was opened, the previous owner of the house had actually cleared a lot of the lot. Turns out on that survey, there was actually covenants and restrictions on how much land can be cleared, right? He cleared out trees and put grass. So they got through the entire inspection process. They had the inspector at the house. It was like 8 times for a pool permit, in-ground pool, and nobody had flagged the lot. But when it came to actually submitting that final CO to actually get the CO, the town said, wait a second, this CO, this survey that you have here with this inspection shows that 80% of the lot is cleared, and there's a covenant restrictions for 50% clearance, right? So that means that the owner, in order to close out that permit, actually had to replant a ton of vegetation and follow the required list for the town of Brookhaven in order to get that CO. This was a transaction that we ended up pulling together in the end. It took a lot of hours at the town and a lot of talks with the expediter, but we were able to pull it off after planting another 30% of the area. So definitely going to want to pay attention to those things and realize that it's not just a simple process once those inspections are done. There's other things you got to do. So to wrap this up, the biggest thing that you're going to want to do before you go to list a property, if you're a seller, or before you go to buy a property, if you're a buyer, is get a FOIL from the local township. Again, if there's a village in place, you'll probably go to the village for the building department, but some villages don't have their own. You're still going to go to the township. It could be town of Brookhaven, town of Islip, all depends, but you're going to want to look that up, speak to your broker, get an idea of where the house is located, and also get a clear idea of what's in that FOIL. Make sure that everything was actually requested in that FOIL as well. Once you have an idea of that, you can basically set a proper plan. If there are some expired permits or there are some open permits or things without a CO in place, to actually tackle that and put yourself in the best position to sell the property or buy the property for the best price, whatever you're looking to do. And the biggest thing on that is that if you're going to be negotiating these things out with a buyer, you don't want to leave them last minute where the other party has a lot of the leverage over you when you're halfway through the deal. In my experience, the best thing to do if you get that FOIL is be very clear with your plan of action and whether it's closing it out or not. Speak to a trusted expediter, professional attorney, whoever you've got to do to actually know your steps and where you're at in that process. And then if you are going to contract with a party, if you come to an agreement, tell them up front when they're looking at the property so they know exactly what has a CO and what doesn't. As a broker, the last thing I want to do is show the property, go through this whole process of getting an offer, negotiating terms, and then when they go to sit down with their attorney, take a look at the FOIL report and say, wait a second, there's no CO for 3 things and an open permit on the pool and whatever else. You don't want that to happen. Set expectations with the other side up front so they have a clear understanding what it is. And it's also okay in this market, especially in a seller's market, to say, hey, we don't have it and we're not getting it, if it's in reason. And then it's up to the buyer's comfort level to decide if they want to move forward. But setting clear expectations with the other side is the best thing that you can do to make sure that your deal is actually going to go through. All right, guys, that wraps up today's video. Again, my name is Anthony Vita with Real Broker here on Long Island. If you have any questions, you can look in the description. All my info is down there. If you have an open permit on your property or you have an expired or no CO for something, shoot me a quick message. I'll give you my opinion on what the best steps are and point you in the right direction. Thanks again.